Hey there, welcome back to Best of the Backroads. Today, it's super soggy outside, so I'm going to talk about how I transformed my 2024 CRF300L into the ultimate light adventure bike. All the mods I've done, everything I've added, and now that I've got just about 5,000 miles and 5 months on the bike, I'm pretty sure this is how she's going to sit, and I'll go over it with y'all. Let's get started. Adventure bike, dual sport, there's a fine line in between the two, and there's a couple of things that make an adventure bike and a dual sport. And some of that is weight, some of it's engine size, some of it's comfort. But typically, all those things are going to add weight, and a dual sport is a lot lighter than an adventure bike because they don't need these things. And I've tried to bridge the gap and come up with the ultimate lightweight adventure bike for me. In order to bridge that gap between dual sport and light adventure bike, I decided to start out with a Honda CRF-L. Now, I didn't go rally because the rally weighs around 330 plus pounds or 333 pounds, something like that. And the dual sport, the 300L regular configuration, is a little bit lighter. And I thought maybe I could bridge the gap with the true dual sport in a way that won't add as much weight. And that's exactly what I've done, and I kind of want to start out there. So the bike you see behind me, put on a shipping scale that held it all, a large shipping scale, ended up coming in at 307 pounds, which is far less than the 330, 333 pounds, depending upon who you talk to, of the CRF300 Rally version. So I feel happy that I did that, and I started with this platform. It did take a little bit to get the CRF300L into a position to be a lightweight adventure bike, and I'm going to tell you all the mods I've done and why I ended up doing them. I'm going to start out with the first thing you may notice here is the Acerbis 3.6 liter tank. And now this bike has 3.6 gallons of fuel, and it gets conservatively maybe 60 miles to the gallon. The engine's pretty efficient, so we're looking at right around 200 miles depending upon how you throttle it out. This right here is probably what changes it the most, or at least makes it look so much different than the original 300L looked, is this rally tower. And this rally tower addresses a few things. It is the One Adventure Rally Tower. It addresses my lighting issue. It has these double LED lights up here, which are much brighter than stock. Coming around back to kind of, I guess, the cockpit view, you can really see how the One Adventure Rally Tower highlights the Garmin XT that's on the bike. And then this little thing is my phone holder. And so I can have plenty of information up here. And when I turn it on, you can definitely see a nice clear readout of everything else on the bike. So it's an excellent looking setup from the cockpit, and this is the view as I'm going down the road. I'm really, really happy with the Rally Tower. One other thing I guess I should mention with the One Adventure Tower is that it has two USB ports built in, and when you put it together, it all plugs in the same connector that your original headlight went to, so it makes for a really easy install. And while we're up here, I should probably mention I did go with the CR Mid from Pro Taper, as well as a little bit of a riser. It just puts me in a better standing position, and the cockpit feels really nice with that for my height. And I'm 5'10 and a half, or maybe a little bit taller than that. And the stock setup was just a little bit too low when standing. Once I put a small riser on here and then went with these Pro Taper CR Mid bars, everything came together nice, and it feels really good riding down the road. Up here at the front of the bike, you can see it's got Acerbis handguards. I mean, any kind of handguards with a metal backing are good for me. They protect your hands from brush. They protect your levers from breaking on a fallover. They make all kinds of handguards. I just happen to like Acerbis. And while we're talking of it, I've also got the plastic, I guess I'll call it plastic, Acerbis bash guard below, and the Acerbis side guards right along the side there. And I got the side guards because the paint along the side, after just 6 weeks of riding, started to rub off. It seems kind of thin there. I don't want to wear the paint off and eventually get rust spots, so I went ahead and covered them. And then I did go with the plastic bash guard simply because it's lighter, and I was thinking weight when I went with that, and it's also quieter. The metal ones tend to pop engine noise back up at you, or at least it did on my DRZ400, so I went with the plastic guard. I think the plastic slides over rocks and any logs easier. And this isn't a hard enduro bike, so I don't expect to need the full protection that metal would give me. Okay, enough of that. She's just not a pretty face. There have been performance mods as well, and I'm going to tackle them kind of all at once. A lot of people, the first thing they think of is, oh, I need a full pipe, and I did. I went with the Yoshimura full pipe system. That really opened it up, and you can tell the header coming out, you can really tell the size was much bigger on the Yoshimura than the stock, which is excellent. But to get the full effect of opening up an engine, I also have the 550 Performance Airbox and the 550 Performance Tuner that will change how the ECU feeds the fuel mixture. And I can tell you it has really woken the bike up. It is much snappier. I don't think I've gotten the top end that if you're chasing that, but I've definitely got a much snappier fuel delivery. I think I've got a more linear curve, and it definitely feels far less sluggish than stock. And for a 300 bike, it performs very well. I'm not disappointed at all. The pipe sounds good, the performance is good, but you really have to do all three in concert to get that performance. I think if you do one at a time, you won't see a performance gain quite like if you end up doing them all at once. And admittedly, it wasn't a cheap upgrade, but being as this is my ultimate light adventure bike, I went kind of all out on putting the performance together. Speaking of performance, if you know anything about the Honda CRF300, everyone talks about the soft suspension, and that is true. Just go throw your leg over one, and you will sag and sink right into it. And with an adventure bike, where you're going to be putting gear on top of it, where you're typically wearing full gear as well, you're heavy. And these bikes were probably made for someone about 160, 165 pounds. I'm a little bit over that, as most Americans are. And then when you put gear on me, and then when I put even light adventure gear on the back, it just makes for a heavy bike. So I had to address the shocks. And what I went with was the UK Rally Raid Level 2. The difference between Level 1 and Level 2 is Level 2 gets the full height of the bike, so you get all the travel, but it does make a very high bike. This bike is much higher than what you would find, maybe not much higher, but it's probably an inch higher with very little sag when you get on it. As a more experienced rider, I'm fine with that. Your mileage may vary. If you don't like a high bike or perhaps are a newer rider, the Level 1 kit lets a little bit of sag in there, so a lot of people feel more comfortable. It has been an excellent real shock. It's made all the difference in the world. It does not pogo stick at all. And as a matter of fact, it makes the bike feel very responsive. Same thing up front. I actually didn't go with the Rally Raid up front because I was running out of budget. Up front is a Racetech spring. It's a pretty stiff one, but it really has matched well with the UK Rally Raid and at a much more modest price. It's gotten rid of a lot of the brake dive. It feels good on the bike. It feels nice and stiff. It lets me be pretty aggressive when I'm just riding trail, not necessarily doing a BDR or trip with luggage. So the suspensions I have been a success. Now, they are not terribly adjustable. That is the downside. But when I got the springs, I dialed it in for my weight, and the rear is as slightly adjustable as well, but it's a kind of a pain in the ass to get to. Again, I adjusted it for my weight for traveling, and then it just feels a little stiffer when it's unladen, which is actually fine for me. It works well because I'll tend to ride harder when it's not got gear on the back as well. So that works well. I never changed out my DRZ400 shock settings. I'm not racing anything. I can hit a pretty wide band before I feel like my performance is suffering. Definitely if you're a racer, maybe you don't feel that way. One caveat to be aware of when you're putting together the UK Rally Raid Level 2 kit is you will definitely need to replace the kickstand. Once the Level 2 got on there, the bike leaned so far over, it was very near to falling over if you put any type of weight on the back. So I got an extended kickstand, Rally Raid actually makes one, and they have on their website for it. This is a cheaper one. I'll put the name of it here in this video. Moving to the back of the bike, I can tell you I went with the Adventure Spec rear rack, and it ties into these Adventure Spec side panels, and they're light metal side panels to provide some crash protection. But because this is a light adventure build, I have soft bags, a rackless system that fits right over here. I do like a rack because it keeps your rackless system more stable, and then these keep it off the Yoshimura pipe. You don't want to, I didn't want to damage my pretty pipe, but it also protects the pipe from damage. And I really like Adventure Spec stuff. They make solid stuff that's really light, and I think it looks good on this bike. Talking comfort, I hope you can see right there, I've got a Seat Concepts regular seat. It's been excellent. I've had these seats before, and they are much more comfortable than stock seats. Well, no seat's perfect, and certainly on a dual sport, it is not like my GS or everything where it's like riding a couch, but it is definitely more comfortable than the stock seat. So way to go, Seat Concepts. They make them in a low and a more cushy one, but this is just the standard one, and I find it fits me great. Stock rubber is never the best to run. It is almost good for no terrain, and these bike tires are a little bit worn. They've got about 4,000 miles on them, and they are the Tusk Adventure D Sports. I've run them on my DRZ 400. Chris is running them on his WR250, and while they're a budget type tire, they work really well for us, and we run through several of them over the years with no complaints. I know some people say that perhaps the front one is not quite good, but I found it to be quite adequate and pretty good for all types of terrain, from mud and even on asphalt. So the price is right on them. We'll continue running them. So there you have it. This is the ultimate lightweight adventure bike that I'll be running for 2025. It has been so good that I have to admit I've actually sold my GS. There is no more GS in the garage. It doesn't mean I'm not going to have a big bike soon in the stable, but definitely for BDRs, I have converted to wanting to run and ride a smaller, lighter bike. They're a lot more fun. They're just easy and accessible, and you can have really long days without tiring out so much. That doesn't mean the big bikes are bad. It's just kind of what I've gravitated to over the last couple of years. I think I did my very first BDR on the big bike. I did the Smoky Mountain 500 on the big GS, and then we went to the Northeast and started riding little bikes. And looking back, we didn't go back to the big bikes. We still had them. We rode them for other trips, but actually every BDR or 3- and 4-day trip, we started running little bikes. And that's what I think we'll do in 2025. Though I do need to replace the GS, because for some of the long trip travel, touring type stuff, a big bike is worth it. We'll see more of the little bikes, so subscribe for content. I plan to run this 2025. I think I can relay that information to you guys, and hopefully it'll help you decide if you should run and ride little bikes or stick with big GSs. Not that any bike is bad, but they all do have their pluses and minuses. Until next time, I'll see you on the road.